Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Motley Stew Show, where I see what stories pique my interest this week. So let's look at the menu. It's a busy week. So coming up first in the appetizer, it usually points to something on its way, something that's coming, kind of like a treat before your main course. But this week's appetizer is actually a reference to something over a century old. So this amateur criminologist, this amateur ripperologist, as you would, seems to have found what he thinks is the identity of Jack the Ripper. Now, he did this by actually buying a scarf at auction, and the scarf was found at the murder scene of one of the victims that was claimed to be part of Jack the Ripper tirade. Now, this victim's name was Catherine Eddowes. Now, the amateur criminologist named Russell Edwards figured that this scarf looked to be a bit too expensive for Catherine Eddowes to have actually had on her person at the time of her murder, because she had also just sold her shoes in order to eat the night before or very close to it. So why would she have kept the scarf and sold her shoes? So he figured that the scarf was either something that Jack the Ripper had worn or that he had left it there as a clue. And that scarf also turned out to have blood stains on it. Now the blood stains seemed to be from two different people. So it was one likely Catherine Eddowes and other possibly Jack the Ripper himself. So this is the theory that Russell Edwards was working with when he decided to buy the scarf. And then he had it treated. So he connected with this scientist, and I'm going to put his name below because, again, I don't want to butcher names. So what they did was they DNA tested the scarf, and they seem to say that they've actually found usable DNA from both sources. So then they tracked the genealogy of Catherine Eddowes and worked down her generations and found somebody that's still part of her family line. They took her DNA and tried to match it to the bloodstain that they thought was from her. And then they looked at the six main suspects that were part of the Jack the Ripper ethos, and decided to go down their family lines. And they think they have found a match to one of those six suspects in the DNA that was on the scarf. So the identity seems to be a person named Aaron Cosmos, who is a hairdresser who actually lived only 200 yards away from where Catherine Eddowes was found dead. Now, for some ripperologists, this is the culmination of a lifetime of over a century of study and investigation. But for some others, this is kind of something that they really don't want to see. The identity of Jack the Ripper is kind of like a mystery that they don't want to be solved. It's something that they like to have books about. And some people think that this is really just a case of just selling another book about the identity of Jack the Ripper. Of course, back in the earlier episodes of when they thought they had found Jack the Ripper, a lot of those things were just wild conspiracy theories, and also they didn't have any scientific evidence backing it up. So this one looks a little more credible. But there's two things that have been pointed out that could be wrong. One, they don't really have a good proof of ownership of that scarf through the 128 years. So it's hard to say that blood is perfect. And the other one is that they can't prove for a fact that Aaron Cosmos, the person that they've now picked as Jack the Ripper, wasn't just a copycat killer. That he didn't just get inspired by Jack the Ripper and then decide to go out and kill Catherine Eddowes. Now, if you're wondering what might have happened to Aaron Cosmos, he actually died and leaves an asylum at 53 years old. So it's very likely that he didn't go on killing people if it was still him. So I don't know, some people still like mysteries to remain unsolved because it's more fun. I mean, I've got mysteries that I still don't understand. Like, I don't know why Gargamel hated the Smurfs so much. Moving on to this hour this week, we've got Lauren Mayberry, who's the lead singer of the huge hit band Churches. She recently gave a 50-minute talk at Google about music, gender, and social media. And before you go thinking that she's just another person, another woman who's gotten a microphone in front of her due to fame or whatever, and she's just kind of spouting off feelings and things that she might not have to back it up, this is not someone you want to mess with on this topic. She has a 4-year law degree, a master's in journalism, and she knows exactly what she's talking about. So check out this talk, it's hugely interesting. So moving on to the drinks portion this week and things that make people dumber. Surprisingly, those things can be textbooks when crappy information is put into those textbooks. For years, for decades, there's been a culture war silently going on down in Texas on the school boards. Now, the reason why is because there's the Texas Board of Education, and they actually determine standards, educational standards. Now, those standards get used by the publishers of those textbooks as into what information they put in those textbooks and how they display it. Now, of course, Texas school board is run by hugely right-leaning conservatives, so they're going to push their point of view. So they're trying to take out things like evolution, they're trying to push creationism, they're taking out people that are social democrats or social, figures, and then put in more conservative figures as being historically important. Now, this happens every few years because those standards come under review. The problem is that the publishers, once those standards are in place, the publishers will make those textbooks based on that because Texas is a huge textbook market. So to sell those textbooks to that market, they have to feed what the market wants. And they end up using those Texas-based textbooks across the country. So what this one state determines as being educational standards and educational correctness is what all these kids learn across the country, which is a scary thought. This one Board of Education is actually ground zero for the culture war of the future. We're not talking about the culture war right now, but we're talking about what these kids are going to learn and what they're going to believe when they move into the next generation. Just to give you a case from things that are coming out from this year's version of textbooks, you've got things like segregated schools weren't quite so bad. In fact, they say segregated schools had similar buildings, buses, and teachers. Sometimes they were lower quality. Sometimes the black schools in segregated time periods were lower quality. Seriously? These people will not realize that we actually have photos from that time period, that photography was around. And even better, we've still got kids that were in those schools who are still alive today. They can tell you from first-person experience what those schools were like, what it was like to be in segregated schools, and what kind of education they were getting. So this is just one of the many ridiculous concepts that they're trying to push. So this is something everyone should really keep their eye on, especially if you have kids, and make your voice heard when you see something you don't like. Look, this is nothing less than the brainwashing of our children and the whitewashing of our past. You can't change history just through some whiteout in a textbook. It's time to realize and accept that there is dirt in our past, and this nation needs to be just fine with being the pig pen in a world full of pig pen countries. So moving on to the main course this week, it's the NFL and the domestic violence issues that they're dealing with. Now, this has been made huge by Ray Rice and by the two videos that were released at different times, but it's not just him. He's not the only NFL player that has been convicted, accused, arrested over issues of domestic violence. There's Ray McDonald from the 49ers who was recently arrested on charges of beating his pregnant fiancée. Now, he got out on $25,000 bail, and he's still playing with the 49ers. Then there's Greg Hardy from the Carolina Panthers. He was arrested and convicted of beating his girlfriend and threatening to kill her. Now, even though he's appealing that conviction, he is still playing with the Carolina Panthers. So the NFL needs to realize this is not just a one-player issue, and they can try to make Ray Rice an example, but they have to keep that going throughout the NFL. They have to make a standard and hold to it. They can't just wow us by trying to push all these punishments on Ray Rice and make us forget of all the other people who didn't get punished. And just so I don't forget, this is also really an interesting point about the domestic violence issue in the culture and the media, because some people are coming out and trying to say that this was actually her fault, that Ray Rice is being unfairly treated. One woman, an AJ Delgado, who's a National Review reporter, went on Fox News and actually said Janae Rice actually knocked herself out. Now that's great clickbait headline, but what she was meaning was Janae Rice initiated the attack. If you watch that second video, which I'm not going to post, but if you watch that second video, you will see that she does. She initiates the attack against Ray Rice. We don't know for what reason. But while she pushes him, he punches her first, and then she gets crazy on him because she just got punched. Then he punches her again. Now, it's hard to say whether or not the punch knocked her out or her hitting the side of the elevator knocked her out. But either way, it was a vicious punch, and she was out cold. And how AJ Delgado can possibly say that she knocked herself out, before moving off this particular topic, let's just understand that AJ Delgado is really just a conservative troll for the anti-feminist movement. But finishing up on Ray Rice, we have to look at the fact that Ray Rice is being systematically erased from the NFL. Not only was his contract dropped from the Ravens, he loses the $50 million, he's indefinitely suspended from the NFL as a whole. No team is really going to pick him up when this is all over with. And he's lost his contract with Nike. Many stores are agreeing to take back his jerseys for credit. One local pizza shop is actually agreeing to take his jerseys for free pizza. And EA Sports is actually removing him from the 14-15 Madden game, which isn't the first time they did that because they've actually removed Aaron Hernandez too after he was convicted of murder. But I don't know, what do you think? Is this really too much? Are they pushing too much on Ray Rice and trying to make him an example so that we all forget what's going on? Is this too little? Do you think he should actually be arrested and criminal charges pressed? It's hard to do because Janae Rice isn't pressing those charges. And I think another thing that we need to think about is why are we all so crazy now about Ray Rice after we saw the second video? Seeing that second video of the actual punch happening doesn't make it worse. It was the same level of revulsion you should have had in the first video watching Ray Rice drag his unconscious fiancée out of the elevator like she was luggage. If we weren't repulsed by that, there's a bigger problem that we needed to see the violence to be repulsed. So I know it's really hard to segue from this over to dessert, but let's try to lighten things up a little bit with actually some kind of sad humor. So what we've got here is a small animated video by Steve Cutts, which tries to show what happens to cartoon characters after they've passed their prime. Basically, they're all washed up, doing menial jobs, working for the city. It's really hilarious in kind of a bleak way, but give it a shot. I think you'll probably find at least a few characters that you recognize. Now, in the charity this week, I wanted to point out the Joyful Heart Foundation, which was founded and created by Mariska Hargitay, the actress from Law & Order SVU. And the reason why I wanted to use this charity this week is because it fits perfectly in with the NFL story that we just talked about. This is a foundation that centers around anti-rape and anti-domestic violence causes. This happens way more than we know because many of the victims don't admit it. Either they're scared of their attacker, or they don't think people will believe them, or they feel they're unfairly stigmatized. There's tons of reasons why women do not come forward about domestic violence and rape charges. But we have to help create this society that is accepting of them, accepting of the fact that we will believe them when they say it, and we will take action when we find out. So please go take a look at this foundation. It is worth your time. It is worth your charity. It is worth your effort. And finishing up this week with something to chew on, I didn't want to go through the whole video, and I didn't want to make this main story because really it's not terribly important in the grand scheme of things, but I would be remiss to not talk about the iWatch, the iPhone 6, and Apple Pay. Now, of course, I already made one mistake. It is the Apple Watch, not iWatch. I don't know exactly why they did that, but my guess is they're starting to feel that the I brand is being unfairly stigmatized as maybe kind of a joke, because we all say things like iCar, I this, I that. So maybe they're trying to move away from that and just really push forward the Apple brand again. Now, the iWatch is fun, and there's some neat little trinkets going on there. That function about being able to send your heartbeat to somebody, that's slightly romantic, mostly creepy. And it seems like it'll be a neat little tool for people that are trying to get themselves fit. But for everyone else, I'm not sure. At $350, it is a little bit of a push to just jump on it for fun. One thing I did like when I was seeing all the press coming out about the Apple Watch was an actual watchmaker, a guy who studies watches, saying that this is actually at the $350 price point, the best watch on the market in terms of pure craftsmanship and the idea of being a watch. He's not talking about the software, he's not talking about functionality, he's just purely talking about the watch and honoring design of watches. So I thought that was kind of cool. And the iPhone 6, I know a lot of my friends are already wanting to get it. I already looked into getting it. It might be a little while before I jump on board, but it is pretty cool. There's some neat things going on there. But I really think that the game changer here is not the watch and it's not even the phone specifically. It's Apple Pay. Apple Pay is actually really interesting, not just because you don't have to carry your credit cards around and do all this other stuff, and it's easier for you to get the phone out, you can just bam, pay it, and be gone. But it's the security in a world of digital invasion. The security that they came up with I thought was really interesting. The phone itself and Apple Pay and your passport never actually holds your credit card information. Once you set up that card, it's basically an invisible link between the bank and the person that you're spending the money with. The card in your phone, all the numbers are erased, everything is gone. It's just a picture for you to see. So when you pay, what it does is it creates a unique one-time only transaction number that it puts into that system, and then they send that to your bank, and your bank basically decodes that. So Apple doesn't know where you spent the money, and it doesn't know what you spent. It just knows that you used Apple Pay at that moment. And I also find it pretty neat the fact that you can lose your phone or have your phone stolen, but not have to go cancel all your credit cards. You can use the Find My iPhone app to go in and say, stop all payments and purchases from this phone. So the person who stole it won't be able to use Apple Pay. And that way you don't have to call all your credit card companies. You don't have to go cut up your credit cards. You don't have to stop anything. You just stop the phone from working. So that was a nice touch. I mean, what do you think? Are you guys excited about Apple Pay, about the iPhone 6, about the Apple Watch? What are you planning to do when this hits the fan on September 19th when the phones come out? So that's it for this week. Thanks for watching, and you can like, favorite, subscribe, share, spread this all around, and comments are awesome. Subscriptions are great, helps out the show. And like I said earlier in my vlogs, those are not going to feature Logan clips anymore just because I'm running out of clips to use and I don't tape them all the time. But on the episodes, Logan's still here.
Your turn. Jump. Let me see you jump. Jump, jump, jump.
Jump, jump, jump.
Oh no.
Biff. Did you say Biff?
He did.
Why are we all so crazy now about Ray Rice after we saw the second video? Seeing that second video of the actual punch happening doesn't make it worse. It was the same level of revulsion you should have had in the first video